Alrighty, y'all. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about something that I didn't think anybody would want to talk about, and that's obviously going to be Rappy Red Hood versus Red Hood, right? For the title of the best character in the game. I do think the best character in the game would go to one of those two characters, and then the second best character in the game would go to one of those two characters. And we're gonna talk about it all, right? So I wanted to do this just because yesterday a lot of people have been pinging me. Pride would ended up pulling their tier list out for Rappy Red Hood, and if you guys actually take a look here, you guys can see that Rappy Red Hood in her burst 1 stage is triple S everywhere in PvP, and then Rappy on her burst 3 stage is triple S everywhere but PvP. And then for Red Hood's burst 1, she's triple S in 2 things, and then A in bossing and SS in PvP, and then her burst 3 triple S in everything, SS in PvP, right? And then obviously Red Hood, her burst 2 is just garbage. So yeah, but basically that's what I'm doing, my pros and cons between the two characters, and then I'm gonna also do a bit of like showcasing between the two characters, try to let you guys know who is better, right? So let's pull both of them up. Now first things first, the pro for Red Hood in general is that she's a burst 1, 2, and 3 character, right? Basically you're allowed to use her at any burst, right? Where for Rappy you're able to use her only as a burst 1 and a burst 3. Now the difference between the two is that Rappy, Red Hood, this Red Hood right here, you can use her as a burst 1, 2, and 3 in the game, like in any battle, right? Anytime you want, you can do that. Where for Rappy, you can go into burst 1, but you cannot use her burst 1 and burst 3 at the same time in a battle, right? You can only use one of the two. She's either a burst 1 character or she's a burst 3 character. That's all she ever is, right? This character is a burst 1, 2, and 3 the entire game, right? Now the thing is, Red Hood is on a 40-second cooldown, so it's like you still have to basically choose if she's going to be a burst 1, 2, or 3 on the team, right? For example, the first time I use her burst skill, yeah, I can use her burst 1, 2, and 3 the first time, no problem, right? But then from the second burst rotation and every other burst rotation after the first one, she's on a 40-second cooldown with any of her bursts, whether it's burst 1, 2, or 3. So if you are using her as a burst 1, you are basically forced to bring another burst 1 in order to have a, you know, valid rotation. And the same thing goes for burst 2, and the same thing goes for burst 3 if using this Red Hood. Like, it's mandatory to have another type of burst on the team. If you are going to use her as a burst 1 or burst 2, you need to have another one of those, right? If you're using her as a burst 3, which mainly everybody does, then it's already normal to have another burst 3 on the team, right? So yeah, that's what she does, right? But this character, like I said, she can go into burst 1 mid battle, but the only way she can do that is if the burst 1 character dies after they use their burst skill. So what that means is, from when you enter the burst rotation, and then like let's say Litter, for example, uses her burst skill, but then from after whoever the burst 2 character is until the full burst ends, within that time span, if Litter dies, then Rappy will turn into a burst 1. But if Litter does not die within that time period, Litter was Red Hood Rappy would still be a burst 3 character, right? So her being a burst 1 and 3 is very, very wonky, where when it comes to Red Hood, hers is also very, very wonky, but you can plan ahead. And the same thing is, technically you can plan ahead with Red Hood Rappy. If I want her as a burst 1, I'll use her as a burst 1. If I want her as a burst 3, I'll use her as a burst 3. That's kind of the same thing with Red Hood, but I would say in terms of switching between bursts, characters, and whatever, Red Hood is definitely more efficient, right? Because if I just use Red Hood as a burst 3, for example, and I don't use her burst 1 and burst 2, if a burst 1 or burst 2 character dies, then I can instantly, no matter what the situation is, I can turn into a burst 1 and still use my burst 3 as Red Hood, which is something Red Rappy cannot do, right? Now the next thing that I would give so I give that whole thing for Rappy and Red Hood, I give that whole sequence to Red Hood. Now the thing about Rappy is that she's 2 of basically everything. She's a burst 1 and burst 3, as I said. She's basically a fire and iron character because she's also type advantage against electrical enemies continuously from the start of the battle. And then she also is a Pilgrim and an Elysion character, right? Meaning you're able to use her in the Pilgrim stage and the Elysion stage, right? Which I think is very, very good. right? If I actually take you guys to the arc where everything is out, I can actually show you guys, right? I am able to go to the Elysion Tower and I'm able to use this Rappy here, right? She is right there. That's a Pilgrim character right there because she is an Elysion. Where when I go to Pilgrim as well, if I go to the last tower real quick, I can also use her as, okay, let's just skip that. I can also use her as a Pilgrim here as well. She is right here. I could put her on the team right there. So I think her being able to be used as one of the two different things for many things, whether it's Elysion or Pilgrim, whether it's Fire and Iron, whether it's burst 1 or burst 3, I think she has a lot more use for your account than Red Hood, genuinely. I do. I think she just has more use for your account than Red Hood because you can mix and match in that. Not only that, Elysion is very terrible. So for them to have a Pilgrim, literally a Pilgrim on their team, potentially the best character in the game is now an Elysion, right? It's very, very good in my opinion, right? So I would give, in terms of most effectiveness, I would give that to Red Hood Rappy. Now, who is stronger? I'm gonna also give that to Red Hood Rappy. Rappy is way stronger than this Red Hood. It's just how it is, right? She's just way, 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 way stronger than this Red Hood. Red Hood is a good character, don't get me wrong, she's powerful and stuff like that, but there's a lot of characters in the game who hit harder than Red Hood, right? Obviously, it took what, Black Shadow, Scarlet, Cinderella, and now this Rappy to come out for them to do more damage than her. And even in some cases, people are still saying Alice before all those other characters came out hit harder than this Red Hood, but I don't think so, right? I think Rappy Red Hood is still the harder hitting character. I'm actually going to do a comparison, right? I'm going to do something because I'm curious. I'm going to go into the stage where both of them are type advantage because, again, her being Iron as well, technically she's not actually classified as Iron, don't get it twisted, she doesn't get Iron buffs, right? But she is type advantage against electric cold enemies, meaning that she, like, basically that's why I say she's like an Iron and a Fire character. She's not Iron though, she's not, but she is effective against two different types, let me put it like that. But if I want to use her as a burst 1 of this team, I can do that, right? So I have no burst 1 right now. I'm gonna put another burst 3, probably Laplace or something. I want to show you guys how powerful this character is being a burst 1 character on the team, right? So we're gonna go in the 3-minute run. I'll probably pause the video so you guys don't have to sit here and watch it all, but I'll come back and I'll show you guys the damage comparison of a burst 1 Rappy and a maxed out burst 3 Red Hood Rappy, or just Red Hood. So there you guys go. We ended up finishing that real quick. We ended up also getting a new high score with this team, but as you guys can see there, Red Hood as a burst 3 who is more invested, 10 full overload gear and core 3 as that 791 million damage, and Red Hood Rappy as a burst 1 character who loses a lot of damage is at 622 million, right? Mind you, my Red Hood, if you guys want to see the difference between these two characters, I'll happily show you, right? She is attraction 10, no dupes, 5500, 567, and then the resilience cube. Red is also resilience cube 10 5555, and then also core 4 with level 4 attraction, by the way, right? You guys can kind of see, right? That's Red Hood. All Red Hood Rappy had there was her burst 1 effects. She got none of these burst 3 effects, which gives her a lot more damage. But now if I switch up the team and I put it like this and I put Litter back on, where now we have our burst 1 and our burst thing, and we're using both of them as a burst 3, let's see who ends up doing more damage. All right, so we ended up using that burst rotation right there. Again, we even got higher this time with Litter, and you guys can see as a burst 3, Rappy did far more than Red Hood. Less invested, by the way. So yeah, when it comes to damage, Rappy is crazy. Even a burst 1, a lonely burst 1 Red Hood is not doing even close to the damage that just a lonely burst 1 Rappy is doing, right? And that's just the reality of the situation, right? Actually, I could make a team where I'm flexing or switching between the two, and I'm actually going to do that as well. All right, I'm going to run this team because by doing this, Red Hood and Rappy are only going to be seen as burst 1s on this team. So I want to compare burst 1 Rappy Red Hood to burst 1 Red Hood and see how they go damage wise and stuff like that. And I want to show you guys, like I do want to show you guys some gameplay as well, just if you guys, you know, just don't understand how the team building works and just think, oh, this is not working. If you guys take a look at my burst right there, yeah, the only ones using their burst 1s are Red Hood and Red Hood Rappy. Remember, like I said, as a burst 1, 2, or 3, after the first time Red Hood uses it, she's on a 40-second cooldown, where Rappy is seen as a 20-second cooldown burst 1 character no matter what, if she is the designated burst 1 character on this team. And yes, Rappy, or not Rappy, Red Hood in general is not classified as a burst 1. She's classified as a burst V or whatever her typing is. So in this team there is no recognized burst 1, hence why you're allowed to do something like this with Rappy Red Hood. Alright, so we only got 19 more seconds of this run. I do want to just show you guys this run so that you guys can kind of see at the end here what the final number is. Remember, these are just 2 burst 1 characters, right? Both of them are supporting, but now there's more to the burst 1s than just supporting. What do they contribute to the team besides the support and all that stuff? And you guys can see Rappy. Heck, Rappy was the second highest character on the team after Laplace, and she's not even that far from Laplace again as a burst 1. Favorite item Laplace, by the way. So it's like as a burst 1, you know, it's crazy. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, but you know, Rappy or Red Hood is a burst 1, 2, and 3. You can switch between her any time. That's what puts her in the #1 slot, right? And I used to think like that as well, but then I asked myself, what if they made a Crow who was a burst 1, 2, and 3 character, but all her burst was garbage? Would she still be a top 10 character just because she was a burst 1, 2, and 3? No, you have to think well more than that. You have to think way past the fact that they're just a burst 1, 2, and 3 and consider what they do as a character, whether they're a burst 1, whether they're a burst 2, or whether they're a burst 3 if they have the ability to be multiple bursts, right? So in the end, honestly, I am going to say genuinely the best character in the game is Rappy. I will say that, and I will stick by that no matter what. I think the best character in the game is Rappy Red Hood just because she is too good, way too good. Whether you're using her as a burst 1, she's supporting the, do you know what she gives as a burst 1? She doesn't even give that much as a burst 1, right? As a burst 1, she does have an attack buff to all allies for 10 seconds, right? It's only 15% too of the caster's attack, which is great because she's an attacker. That's not that bad, sure. But then on her first skill, when you're in her burst skill, she actually has CDR and an attack damage buff, which I also think is very, very good, right? My whole point for this character is that as a burst 1, she is supporting the team still with damage and then also still doing too much damage herself, which is kind of also like literally covering up the missing damage you would get for having maybe a stronger burst 1. Like Rappy herself covers the damage missing from probably all the other burst 3s on the team if you were to run a better burst 1 in terms of buffing damage wise, right? That's what she does. And then as a burst 3, she's just too powerful, way too strong. Like genuinely, she's way too powerful. She's already doing more than some of the burst 3 characters in the game as a burst 1. And mind you, as a burst 1, she is missing out on all this effect, that 2,376%, missing out on it. This additional 352% for attachment damage, missing out on it. And she's also missing out on the second skill here. What's the 120 normal attacks to get all this off, going down to 60. She's losing so much damage as a burst 1 character, whether it compared to if she was a burst 3, and still doing so much more damage than a lot of the burst 3 characters as a burst 1. I think easily Rappy Red Hood is the best character in the game. I never even considered Red Hood's burst 2 because it's really just so bad. It's like such a bad mechanic. I don't like it at all. As her burst 2, she gets, I think, what is it? She just taunts all enemies and she can heal, and that's it. Like, it's garbage. She's not doing anything. She's killing herself. She's a liability, right? Being able to just taunt all enemies and heal, like taunting all enemies when you need it is useful, don't get me wrong, but the healing part of it, I think if they gave her damage reduction when she taunted or something like that to like keep her alive when you use her burst 2, then she would have been still probably the best, because that burst 2 would have been godlike as well, right? Red Hood's burst 1 is fantastic. Red Hood's burst 3 is fantastic, but the same thing is also said for Rappy Red Hood. And then not to mention, like I said, she's an Elysion character. She's a Pilgrim character. She's strong against wind characters. She's strong against electric characters. She's a burst 1. She's a burst 3. She's the only character in the game that can do that, right? right? I can literally go into 2 different towers with 1 character, and that's crazy to me. I can do all these tower stages like this and get far because obviously Rappy is a crazy character. And again, being able to use her as a burst 1 and a burst 3 and still being type advantage against 2 different types in these towers, in 2 different towers, is like crazy to me, right? And this is just like what a lot of people don't really realize. People do not realize how crazy this Red Hood Rappy really is when you consider all the things she's able to do because of her kit. So yeah, I will easily say Rappy Red Hood is the best character in the game. I am just going to show you guys this little part of me going to 2 different towers, right? Obviously the Elysion Tower and then obviously the Pilgrim Tower. I'll probably just do 1 stage of each to just show you guys how that works. And boom, right? Even if let's say I have Red Hood Rappy as well and I don't have a burst 1 Pilgrim on the team, I could use Red Hood as well, but like I said, in some stages in the tower, like, you're gonna need to use multiple bursts, right? You're going to need to, and if you don't have multiple burst 1s, it's kind of difficult for you with Red Hood is always on a 40-second cooldown, right? This is a Pilgrim team. If I was to do this now is still a functional Pilgrim team, right? And again, that's an Elysion character I just put on the Pilgrim Tower. A lot of useful mechanics here that a lot of people just don't consider, right? So yeah, I will give the best character title in the game. I will give it to Red Hood Rappy, Red Hood, Red Rappy, right? If you want my order, I will say it's Red Hood Rappy, like Rappy Red Hood, right? Rappy Red Hood, then Red Hood, then Crown, right? I do think Crown is more useful in terms of buffing up characters than Red Hood. Like, I think Crown is more useful than Red Hood in doing that. But again, Red Hood is just too powerful as a burst 1 and 3 character. So it's kind of like, okay, you're just way too powerful at that, and I'm sorry, but we cannot take away that simple fact. So I will say it's Rappy, then Red Hood, then Crown. That's what I would say. The order is right now from my top 3, my personal top 3, right? You guys can kind of see here, and even still, as the burst 1, she did the 2nd highest on the thing, right? It's just how it is. So you guys let me know if you guys agree or if you don't agree. If you don't, then it's fine. But if you was I here this whole time, it's fine. You guys can still see me. If you agree, then you agree. If you don't, then you don't. It's fine. Either way, Rappy Red Hood and just the regular Red Hood are still very broken characters. But it's really hard for me to say Red Hood is better than Rappy when all these facts just align with Rappy, and I showed you guys that as well. So you guys let me know what you really think. It's your boy Zxous. I'm out. Peace.